Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast. Where on this episode, as you guys know, I have a special guest, Mr. Ryan Buell, and it's pretty crazy that he is a guest on this podcast because I did not know that I would ever speak to him again, much less have him on as a guest of the podcast. Now, let me tell you guys a little story as to how I met this gentleman and how he honestly changed my life. And then we'll get into his life and kind of where our lives merged and where they separated for a while and why. I'm here to tell the truth and share with you guys the realities of my life and the lessons that I've learned that I deem to be special. And there's a lot of them here. Now, when I decided I was going to kind of go into the public side of the paranormal, I had made a documentary called Paranormal. And to my surprise, before I even had the edit done, I was invited on board the Queen Mary for a big Darkness Radio event to share the trailer to this. And very quickly, I kind of, met all of the who's who in the paranormal TV world. But I didn't meet Ryan. There was mumblings at that time of this show called Paranormal State. Now, I had read about it online, but I didn't know Ryan. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know what the show, would be. But there was a big named person that was very excited about Paranormal. And he started talking to me about places that Paranormal could go. And through that conversation, he said, you just want to make sure you don't go to A&E. And I was like, well, why? I'm thinking A&E is a dope-ass network at the time. And he goes, have you met this Ryan Buell? And I'm like, no. And this person proceeded to just bash this guy to the ground. Personal life stuff that shouldn't be even spoken about. And, oh, he's this, he's that, he's cocky, he's arrogant. I think he fakes shit, like all this stuff. And I didn't know Ryan, so I just kind of took it as, wow, that's kind of weird that he was that like against this dude. But I had that in my head. But I had never met him, so I waited to see the show. Eventually, the show came out. I didn't make any effort to reach out to Ryan at that time. I was actually off doing my own thing. As you guys kind of know from my timeline, oddly enough, there were some other eyes on Paranormal, which were the eyes of Steven Spielberg, in which I started working with him and this project called Rising that we were doing. Now, 2007 comes around, the financial collapse happens of the stock markets, and it greatly affected major companies, including the underwriting for it was actually the Ford company for the Rising project. And Rising gets stalled. And they put me on this crazy 18-month contract where you basically can't do anything. They pay you, but you're not allowed to do anything else. Which might sound like fun. It's purgatory. It's horrible. During that time, Ryan got a hold of me. And he was super cool, like the whole time. And we kept talking. And there was just a normal friendship that was occurring. And but no talk of the show. As far as me being a part of it. And then, literally out of the blue one day, I get a phone call from Ryan, and he said something else that I thought was really cool. He called me up and he basically said, I'm expanding this cast, and I need some new people, and I've been watching what you do. I like what you do. And he was like, and, here's the deal. He was like, I don't care if people agree with me or my methods or anything like that. I just care that they're engaged and they watch, they get involved. And I was like, that, is incredibly intelligent for a young guy that's trying to get a show off the ground. That should be his focus. Make him care. I've always looked at my filmmaking the same way. I don't care if you love my films or hate my films. I would care if you're indifferent to my films. That's what would matter to me. There's not much difference between love and hate. There really isn't when it comes to, art. So to make a long story short, I ended up meeting Ryan face to face while actually out on a tour for doing some promotional stuff for Rising. I think the first night I met him, we ended up getting just drunk as shit, which was crazy because I barely drank, and we had an amazing time. Um, and from there, the closest thing that I've ever had to a true bromance occurred. I fell in love with this guy platonically, but I really did. I truly enjoyed being around him. I felt like he was one of the few guys that I'd ever met in my life that could kind of understand my world because I kind of understood his, even though we were extremely different people. And it was exciting. It was incredible. And from there, I felt like this is somebody that I could build and accomplish things with, and he felt the same way. And we started doing that. We started making plays to make things happen, and then things started going a different direction. Now I'm going to hold up here and welcome Mr. Buell to the podcast, and let's kind of hand the baton off to him. How you doing, Ryan? What's up, man?
Hey, Chad.
Story time for you, huh?
Yeah, it was making me think about, things from so many years ago. Yeah, it's just even still weird sometimes when I'm on the phone with you and hearing your voice. It's crazy.
It's funny when you were talking right there. I was just thinking that when you were talking right there, that it's weird to hear your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. There was a time I didn't know, honestly, dude, if I would ever see you again, or would ever speak to you again, and that was wild. And we'll get to that. But let's kind of talk about uh, the early days of Paranormal State. What was that like for you? Or were you aware that there were people that were fans of yours in the paranormal community, but there were people that were honestly kind of against you before it ever started? Were you aware of that?
Sure. Yeah, I remember when, because I knew a lot of people in the paranormal too because of our conference.
Sure.
But I remember when that all changed is when we premiered our show at the conference UnivCon at Penn State. And, because we held it every year. And I think this was like our sixth one or something like that when we premiered it. And there was just, during that time, everybody in the, all the big hubbubs in the paranormal community were there. And then it was just like, we premiered it. And then it was just like this, I don't know, this tonal shift. And then, of course, when the show premiered,
like tonal shift in a bad way or a good way?
At first, it was. I mean, and hindsight's 2020. So, this is from just like reflecting and looking back. But it was kind of like relationships changed from that moment on.
But I'm saying, was it a good change or a bad change?
It wasn't good. It was
right.
It was kind of like, oh, this person's competition now, which I never saw or thought of ever. I thought, we're doing our thing, and there's many different ways you can investigate the paranormal, just like how there are different specialists in the medical field, or in therapy. It's like, but I think I kind of had this very innocent kind of romantic view of like we support one another. But and I think because I was hosting this conference, and and it was good PR for people involved, and it was we always tried to create a great atmosphere for people. People were very nice to me. But then all of a sudden, when we had a show, suddenly I was arrogant. I was this. I was, whispers about whatever, my personal life or whatever. It's just, so it was just like weird because I'm like, what did I do? Aside from just the fact that I've got a show coming out. But once the show actually did come out, then yeah, it was just like, it was like, tribes were formed of like, you're either on this team or you're on that team or you're on this other team. Like, and but in all fairness, we were kind of in a bubble anyways. We were kids from Penn State. So, we were always wanting to think outside the box anyways. So we didn't really care to be so embedded with the paranormal community. So yeah, it was, it was weird. And it was a little heartbreaking, you know.
Right. Well, when I first met you, it was wild because I was going through a similar thing, but I can admit that, and maybe I didn't see it towards me. Um, People found out because we went out and we filmed a couple episodes with Rising, and when you roll in to New Orleans and you roll into the West Virginia State Penitentiary with that name across your back, everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
But no one really knew much about the project, and they wanted to be a part of it. So I felt like people were kind of being nicer to me than they typically would have in the beginning. And I didn't really understand the hatred that was and the vitriol that was like going towards you guys until I saw the episode and I was like, oh, okay, this is a brand new way to do this. And, Ryan will be the proprietor of this format. He would be if this takes off, this is another very big, powerful person in the paranormal community. And I think because you were younger, at least from my point of view, I think your age I think there's a bit of ageism going on where people didn't like that. And I say people, it's not fans per se. It was the community. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But the innocence that you had did blow me away. It blew me away that you had got as far as you got. Because I remember talking to you guys, like the first time I did an episode, your whole team, everybody, like, I remember going to this restaurant. It was like one of those like Denny's or something like that. And it was like they cornered me, man. And they like wanted to know everything about Rising, like right down to like salaries and accommodations and flying. And I quickly discovered that there was a pretty rough deal that you guys signed. 6 people sleeping in a 1 bedroom, and I'm just like, what?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I remember talking to you about it, and yeah. And I was talking to you about it, like wondering why you weren't more pissed off. And I remember you started talking about how, I'm not going to even say this person's name again. I'm not here to bash anybody, but this person had either convinced you or you convinced yourself that they loved you like a child. And I remember just wanting right away when I just met you, I just wanted to go, Ryan, listen, this person doesn't love you. Okay. If they loved you, you wouldn't be being, in the position that you're in right now, as far as, the way you're treated on set and your contract and stuff. But nonetheless, you were winning somehow. Those contracts sucked and things were rough. But your show had a ton of buzz about it, a ton of hype about it. And you were only at the time, how old are you, 23 or 24 when that got off the ground?
I think I was 24, I think, when it came out. I think that sounds about right.
That's crazy. Yeah. So when it comes out, you've graduated college.
Yeah, I'd graduated like right after we shot the pilot. It was a slow process, man. We're talking like development for like a year or two, and then all of a sudden, okay, we got a pilot. Then it was like sit around, wait. I'm sure you know that, but
sure.
Yeah, I'd finally graduated by the time they were like, "Let's do the show," and I'm like, "Well, I'm not really in school anymore."
Yeah,
but they were like, "Well, are there other classes or is there another degree you'd like?" And I'm like, well, kinda, So,
that's the weird part about it. Yeah. Would you want to go back to college to make the show? That's hilarious.
So I was taking some classes, not like necessarily, maybe on their end it was though to keep up appearances, but I was like, shit, all right, let's get that archaeology degree. But yeah, by the time we started officially shooting the show, like full order series, I had just graduated. But they were like, well, it's fine.
Right.
you know.
Yeah, that's wild.
So,
Um,
but yeah, when you were talking about like contracts and stuff, I mean, and how Hollywood is, I mean, yeah, you hear stories, but I mean, again, I mean, you've been to State College. It's this
yeah,
college town in the middle of Pennsylvania, farmlands everywhere you could see.
sure.
And then I'm from South Carolina originally, so I knew that there was business dealings, but I thought that it was. I mean, look, when you're being told you're making 1,500 an episode, you're like, that's a lot of money, you know.
Yeah, when you're 23, I guess you're probably looking at it like
Yep.
that, right? And the thing was, you were making that. I mean, I know from my first. I even talked about it. My first 3 episodes, I made no money. I lost money. Like they offered no money. I was just like, I kept waiting for like the offer of like, okay, at some point are they going to tell me what they want me to make on this? And it was, I was in a really weird situation because of the rising thing, right? Where I was getting paid a healthy amount. And I'm like over here going, wow, no money, huh? Now, we later reversed all that, but it was like, it was bad. I was like, this is some of the craziest. And even my manager at that time, who later managed you, was like, I don't even know if this is legal. It's so bad.
Yeah.
He was like, this is rough. So, I mean, I knew kind of early on, I was like, if this goes somewhere, then I need to get Ryan over and get him the representation he needs. And then the idea would be that you would also turn around and help the other cast members out. Which the other thing about that was really strange to me, and I just didn't know how you dealt with it early on, is everybody that was on the show and everybody that you were surrounded by, um, it had to have changed the dynamic of your relationships because anybody that was your friend could get on that show if you decided to bring them on. And that was a very unique aspect of the show, is that it was supposed to be a documentary series documenting the Paranormal Research Society.
Yeah.
And that means whatever you do. So you could literally overnight make anybody you want, hey, welcome to TV, you know? And I could see right away how that was going to, or could potentially create some very difficult relationships. But I could also see how that was going to put you on an island, man, where you wouldn't know ultimately who was or wasn't your friend. And by the time I met you, I felt, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or right, but I felt a healthy degree of paranoia building inside of you. Was that accurate, you think?
Well, the paranoia was mostly coming from like the production side. I think it like it's weird, like season one, there was no hype, there was no expectation. It was, this is cool. Let's just do this thing. When I look back at how all the seasons were, and each season kind of had like themes, season one was just kind of like, fuck it, let's just do it. There was no, we've got deadlines in this. I mean, we took our time doing it, and like, like production moved to State College. We hung out with them all the time. Like we became really close. Um, we shot that over the course of like 4 or 5 months, and we were just kids. We were like, oh, this is really cool. I mean, like camera crews were following us. We were like, this is awesome, but also strange.
Oh yeah.
And then when season two came out, which obviously by then, A&E had hyped it up, spent a lot of money promoting it. I mean, billboards, movie trailers. It was a different monster. And so then it was like, hey, a season two. And we were like, okay, well, what about money? And and I later found out, so I was being paid two different fees. I I think I think it was like 5 or 6,000 was one fee, and then like 1,500 was the other. but the way it was explained to me was that 5 or 6 thousand was like PRS's budget for equipment if I wanted to pay my team. So like I did. Later I found out, no, that technically that 6,000, 6,000 was my appearance fee. And the 1,500 was my
Right, yeah,
consulting
yeah.
producer. So I was paying my fee to the rest of the team. And again, they're college students. This wasn't like a
Ooh.
career thing. So like they were getting a few $100 here and there all collectively. Um, but like, yeah, then you see all this hype and promotion and you're like, well, crap, I'm broke right now. I'm broke right now.
Yeah, right, right.
So, but yeah,
Yeah, well, that was the first thing I did once I knew I was in a position where they were going to bring me back, and it was the day that I filmed one episode with you guys. You probably remember this, and then the entire season 2 trailer came out, and you probably know the line that I'm remembering right now.
yep,
There's something down here, bro.
yep,
And I was like, oh, okay. The guy that said that line has made no dollars from this series. That's going to change.
yep.
And I talked to Kurt, and he got him on the phone, and it changed that day. But I do want to tell a quick story to everybody. And this is when, like any relationship, you and I, you learn to trust with baby steps. You know what I mean? With any relationship. And we had started to really become friends where we were talking like outside of the show, and when we had the chance, like in between episodes, if we had 2 or 3 days off, we had started doing our little rendezvous to New York and stuff. And there came a time where we had finished up season 2 and season 3 was starting. And I was just like, man, I don't care what anybody is making. I am not getting fucked again. That's not going to happen, man. Like, you're not going to use my face, my name, my voice, all this shit, and then tell me, oh, well, there's no money here, but you could feel free to use any fame that you may gain to make money. I'm sitting there going, no, 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 no. So Kurt had got involved and had basically thrown down a gauntlet number and then just said, listen, if you want Chad involved, this is it, period. And it's going to go up from here, but this is it. And we had you probably know where I'm going with the story. We had a shoot scheduled. And I arrived, and it was like 2 days before that shoot, and I was like, Ryan, man, no one's called me yet. And you were like, well, they will. They kind of have to. I mean, and I'm like, okay. And then the next day comes, and no one calls me yet. And the following morning comes, and we're supposed to be filming like 6 hours later. And I'm, in your living room, and I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to have to walk. I'm going to have to walk, man. So, yeah, I basically just said to you, I said, Ryan, like, listen, this is like an integrity thing. Like, no, I'm not going to be raped. I'm not going to be fucked. I don't care. I'll go home. I'm sorry it's like this, but I just cannot give in. And this person who was negotiating called me on the phone and like started trying to rail on me about how I'm making things so hard for everybody, and there's, so much going on that's bigger than me, and if I want to be a part of this, then they need to buy plane tickets right now. So it's a yes or no right now. And this person that called me was an assistant of the exec, and I pretty much told this guy, listen, first of all, you don't talk to me this way, and I don't have anything to say to you. Like, goodbye. And you heard that, and you came out and you were like, what is happening? And I told you, I said, yeah, they're not going to buy my plane ticket unless, I agree to this. And I was shocked, dude, because you hopped on the phone, but you did it back in your bedroom, and you were trying to avoid everybody hearing the call, but you were pissed. You were really pissed, and you could hear it. And I'll never forget it because it was the first time in my career that somebody else that was, okay in their situation, involved in a project that I'm involved with, that didn't have to step out of their way, didn't have to do anything. But you got on the phone and you 100% threw the gauntlet down. You were like, I'm not going anywhere. You could just, close the whole fucking thing up. I'm not doing anything until you take care of him and it's done. He's going to make the show better. You know it. Quit posturing. I'm not sending him home. If you want me involved, take care of this. And it honestly, Ryan, it blew me away. It blew me away. And these are the stories people don't know and they weren't around for. This is the guy that I knew, that I became friends with, was this dude that was, didn't even, was okay in his situation, but it's not like you were so firm and sturdy that you were even immovable. Like things could have happened that were bad. And you kind of walked out and said, yeah, it is what it is, man. Fuck them. And I was blown away. And I said, so what do we do? And you're like, well, I guess we just wait to see what they say. So we just sat there, and seconds later, my phone rings. It's that same assistant. He's ready to buy my ticket. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I was just told to book your ticket. And I'm like, well, hold on, not yet, because I hadn't heard anything. And a few minutes later, yeah, Kurt calls me and says, yeah, we're good. And it blew my mind that you did that. And it was just something that I've never forgot.
I appreciate that, Chad, but it kind of blows my mind that it blew your mind because in my worldview, it was never in my vocabulary or understanding to be like, well, here's this person who's my friend, and so I'm just gonna sucks to be you like that. You know.
Yeah, well, trust me, this is a town where a lot of people would be like, dog eat dog world, man. I got mine. It happens a lot. And I was really impressed by it. And yeah, it was just a moment in time. Now I remember the episode, that we did, like right after that, and it was incredible, man. I mean, the energy was incredible, which ended up being an amazing episode. And yeah, it was wild at that time. Now on your end, what I started seeing is if he has to fight like this for me, I'm not a part of his immediate team. If he's having to do this for me, he's having to do this for everybody. Were you, and I don't know this for a fact, but did you have to fight those same types of battles for each person on your team?
Oh yeah. Um, like as fun as season one was, season two was like for me when I remember making it was heartbreaking. It was like that disillusionment a little bit of like there was all this pressure, and it was just like I mean there were literally moments where I was just like fuck, f this. Like it wasn't like it constant threats of well if you don't do this then we'll just replace you. Wink wink hee hee. Like kind of like laughing it off like it's not even a big deal for them. And, it was like I was made to feel like shit. And it wasn't just me. I mean, they would talk to me about certain teammates and being like, well, we don't like the way they look, or, they could lose, I mean, like about down to weight, and all this other stuff. And it was just like you feel so disgusting that you're in a business meeting and they're talking about a human being, someone that you care about, in such a like almost like a slave almost. And I'm not saying everyone involved in Paranormal State was like this. And on the production side, I'm just saying like at times it felt that way, and so they didn't have negotiating power. And so like I had to kind of add that to my negotiating power, which was, well, if you want me back, um, you need to do this for them. Like, I mean, they were broke. I mean, as you know, and I was starting to finally make something, but like they had their own bills and stuff. They were, were out of college, and so it was just like this weird thing. And should I have, in looking back, should I have tried to let them negotiate more? Maybe. I just felt very protective of, like, I felt like, they may not get as, like, you don't understand how these people think about you, so let me try to do this. But I think that may have caused some resentment down the road too, because it may have given off the appearance that I decide what you make. And that wasn't the case. It was like, it's just, it had the constant conversations of, well, we'd like to replace them. And that changed. At times they would be like, oh, I love this cast member. And then the other times it'd be like, no, let's get rid of them. It was like constant.
Well, I experienced that when I was directing, talking to the network. But the reason I thought that was such a bad move for you to be negotiating is the network now looked at you to kind of be a fixer. Oh, this cast member's pissed. Ryan, come on, man, make this work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, that's not your job either. You're not an agent or a manager. You're a guy that's trying to, handle big picture of an entire series, and you should be spending your time promoting it and, and working on the show, not being in the mud. Even that phone call on my end, like, dude, it blew me away that you did it. But, and obviously you could hear how thankful I am for it. It's so impressive, but it shouldn't have had to happen, and it shouldn't have been your scenario. I started seeing that internally, this thing is really set up bad. And there's an old, like, saying in Hollywood, you start every relationship how you want to finish it. And if it starts with deception, deceit, chaos, paranoia, how do you think it's going to end?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was another part of the equation, if I'm being honest, was that, again, I wasn't really looking at this as a TV show, a product, a brand. I mean, sure, a little bit, but I was also trying to keep it real. Like, this is PRS. This is about PRS. So, like, these are people who were in PRS and are still in PRS. And, these are people that who I'd come to work with and know for years, and sometimes we're living in my house, like, so to have that mindset of this is a business, and let's just keep it that way. It was already muddy from the beginning, because there was that level of intimacy of, we were a tight knit group of college students or people associated with PRS. And so, like, who were, like, just going to college. And so to collectively suddenly be like, we got to shift and think about this from a different end would have made sense, but it didn't happen that way. And so, we were kind of at a deficit of, like, trying to catch up with, this is now a brand. This is now yes, we're trying to be real and maintain that realness in the show, but it's also a TV show. We got to be honest with ourselves. Like, yeah.
Well, the reality was the only source of revenue that was funding the whole thing was the show. And that's what made it like, oh, okay, this isn't just a group anymore. Like, lives are dependent upon this cash. So that's where the focus was going to be. And you didn't have time to do anything else, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing took up every ounce of everybody's life for years.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. It was, and the seasons, it was like season 2. Oh, season 2.5. Now it's officially season 3, even though they called it something else publicly. Yeah. It was just Back to back to back to back. Yeah.
Right. Now, when this is happening, season 2 to season 3 is when there was a major shift in the popularity of the show, the fans' excitement to the show. I always tell this story about whenever people ask me, like, what was my funnest or most hilarious story from Paranormal State. I guess I have 2 or 3 go-tos, but the one I always die laughing about, and I'm sure you remember this, is it was like episode, like, I don't know, deep into the season. It was like episode 13 or 14 or something. We had lost track of even where we were at. And we had shot like 2 in a row, and we only had like a 24-hour turnaround, and we were starting another one. And I believe we were in Philadelphia, like 4 a.m. at the airport. Flight got delayed. Next flight pushed back. We're like the only ones there. Like you and I decide we got to go to the bathroom, and we're looking for a bathroom. And we're walking to the bathroom, and we see this one gentleman behind us that's just trailing us. And we don't even really say much about him. We just both kind of notice him. And finally we see the bathroom, and we look back, and this guy's a little bit closer. And then we go to the bathroom, and you remember this? And we're literally, dicks in our hand at the urinal, going to the bathroom, and you just hear,
Yeah.
it's like, hey guys, big fan. We both just went, cool, man. Thanks for watching.
Well, I also remember him saying, I remember also saying, I want to ask to shake your hand, but probably a bad time. Because we were, we were both peeing. We both had our hands on our junk. Yeah.
Bad time. Sorry about that. And we just like died laughing. And we had even could tell going to New York, on our little New York trips that we would make. I mean, when we were first doing that, people would recognize you here and there. I mean, the last couple of trips you did, it was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, the amount of the fan base had gotten so strong so fast.
Yeah.
And I remember just wondering, what must that be like for him? For, this kid that was, started this little club, and now it's become this multi-million-dollar machine that, really quickly went from being kind of like the ugly new kid to being like the cool kid, in a really fast, short stretch of time. And, it was funny. I was out here having lunch with my friend George. You know George, yeah, before you had ever met George or anything like that. And George was like, yeah, that must be crazy for Ryan, man. He was like, in George's voice. He's like, that must be crazy for Ryan to be going through all that. I mean, he was like, can you imagine the women that line up for him? I mean, it's got to be crazy, right? I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, dude, he must be having fun. And I like pause, and I'm like, George, you know Ryan's gay, don't you? It just dawned on me. I remember going, oh my God, like this isn't out there.
Yeah.
That was the first time that I was like, and we ended up talking about that a lot privately. Because you know me, I was like, dude, let it rip, dude. Like, be you. Like, and I just saw a hell of advantages for it. But it's also a personal thing, right? I get it. And to me, we were already playing with it and having fun with it. Like, dude, do you remember when I released the infamous picture of you and I on the carriage ride in New York City?
Yeah.
I mean, that was hilarious, bro. Like, literally overnight, everyone thought we were dating. Which, of course, I did it for that reason. It was funny as hell. And then we released a photo of you and Laura.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody suddenly thought, right, you had a girlfriend. I'm like, here's Ryan's new girlfriend. Here she is. I'm like laughing, going, no, that's my wife. But thanks, But I guess that side of it, getting that big and that well known and having people view you, in a way that isn't, look, everything on Paranormal State was a part of your personality, but we used to laugh and do he's an angel sent from heaven, like that whole kind of stuff. I mean, what was that like? Because obviously, to a degree, for a while, you felt like I should not tell people this side of my life.
Um, well, man, that's tough. When it came to just the recognition, I think, looking back, there was some, I think I kind of disassociate a little bit where it's kind of like these people are like, hey, can I get a picture of you, this and that? And I'm just kind of like, it was weird for me too. It's just like, this is really bizarre. So then it was just like, don't think about it, just do it and move on. Um, but then, when it came to like the personal stuff, like it quickly became clear that I was, sound like someone who's got a delusion, but like I always felt like I was being watched. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily mean like in my house or something, but like I had to be extra careful about, how I behaved. And then, it was tough because I was in a relationship, with a guy, and I
Right.
wasn't acknowledging it. And yet, you know, we, and yet, so people assumed A, that I was full blown straight, and B, that I was single. And the TV show definitely put a strain on the relationship because people, yeah, they were, I mean, I used to hate doing events, man, because, like it was, I could see how some people would love it. People were trying to get in your pants, but they didn't care about you. They didn't give a fuck about me. It was about, hey, I had sex with Ryan, and which I'm like, really? That's your goal? It's like, um, but it was isolating, and I was so miserable. Like the relationship I was in at the time wasn't, I mean, it had its great moments, but it should have ended a long time prior than when it did. And, we were growing up, so to speak, and, the TV, the fame thing definitely impacted it, and it made me feel more alone. And, and then on top of that, the whispers, like, oh, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that. And it was just disgusting. Like, and people were already kind of outing me anyways. People in the paranormal field, everyone was like, it was like a dig. Well, he likes guys, right? And it was like, and so it was just this other thing of just like, it's my story to tell, but everyone else felt as if they were justified in sharing this. And so, like, finally, I just decided to go ahead and do it through my book. And I think it was kind of like, okay, I'm putting it in my book, but it's not going to come out for a while, so I can kind of sit on it. But I remember when it was time for the book to come out, man, it was, and this was like years later, like during season 5 when it came out, that, yeah. And then it was just like, boom, everywhere. And I wasn't, looking back too, I don't think I was fully really comfortable with myself or my identity yet. So,
Right.
like, yeah, I had to do it. And that's not to say that when people come out of the closet that they are 100%, healthy and accepting of who they are. No, that this is a
Right.
process, but it was done like back then in 2010. Someone from a cable show on A&E could make news headlines for coming out, which is exactly what happened. I mean, we're talking like Entertainment Weekly was a top story. It was on Fox News. Um, and so it was being shouted at everywhere. Ryan comes out of the closet, and so everyone was like, "Oh, congrats! It must be freeing." And I'm like, "It not really." It was like, I guess in part, but it was. I was glad I was out there, but I was still under this lens. So, yeah.
Well, that's why we had a couple conversations where, I told you, I was just like, dude, I think you should. I'm a big fan of the Eminem, you know, Doc rap battle, philosophy. The whole like lean into it, like at the end of 8 Mile, where he's like, I am white trash. My mother is a whore, and I'm like, it's like he throws the mic and says, now tell these people something they don't know about me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was just like, man, you can do Maury or you can be on Oprah. You know what I mean? It's like lean into this. Just be that lightning rod for the church, like be the disruptor. And I could see that you just weren't fully comfortable with it. And that's why I ended up laying off of it because I'm just like, you know what? I've given my opinion, but it's not my life. And I would totally respect that. And, internal happiness is the most important thing in the world. And I remember thinking if he's not ready, he's not ready, and he can do it the way he wants to do it. But I did. I really wanted that to happen because I just felt like the more and more Ryan can be himself, the longer he will have staying power and will want to do this.
Mm.
But if he keeps going down this path, he's not going to want to do it. And that's when we did the episode of we were just battling internally to take over the show and to launch a new show, and we were getting ready to film American Ghost Hunter, and we did the
Darkness Falls.
Darkness Falls.
Yeah.
You know, God, there's a whole massive story I've told already on here about the battle to get that thing to an hour, and but what was important to me is that it was going to be, in my mind, the first real episode of Paranormal State in regards to your guys' personalities. Paranormal State always did a wonderful job of showing the clients and their struggles. But Darkness Falls was about you guys. And there were moments on there that you didn't look good. And that's because there's moments in life people don't look good. There's moments in life people are dicks and they're selfish and they're angry and they're domineering and they're a bully. And it's like, but that to me, it's like, okay, that makes them human. That makes them like all of us. Like we've all been this person. So that was the biggest note I had to battle the whole time was, man, the label is not liking your version. They kept saying your version of Ryan. And I'm going, I don't have a version of Ryan. Like I don't know what the fuck that even means. I just filmed him. This is who he was.
Yeah.
And I loved it when it came out. Because to me, it's like you want to make this kid a star, Annie. You want to make him a star? Make him human. Let people see that he really struggles with stuff. Let people see that side of him that isn't always wonderful.
But
And now he's interesting.
I think too, like, I think, as you were talking, it made me think that, a thought came to my head, which is like, I think maybe the damage had already been done at that point. Like, I remember you were like, let's lay down, just be you. I don't think I knew how to be me.
Yeah.
Like, like even in that episode where I'm like, no laughing. It's like, God, I sound like a heartless asshole, but it was like, but I mean, look, this, I'm awkward. And to this day, I'm still awkward and weird, but the amount of awkwardness I was like so tightly wound up, man, that because I had to be so contained all the time. I had to, just always, I mean, God, if I got a fucking different haircut, it was the end of the world. So like, that does something to someone. And so, I think here you were rooting for like, look, there's different shades of Ryan. You saw something that I think even I couldn't see anymore with myself at that point, which is that I believed that there were, but it was hard for me to show that. And so, I mean, I love what you were trying to do with Darkness Falls. And obviously it wasn't 100% to your vision, but it still was different and it still tried to crack at it. Yeah.
It was closer to the truth.
Yeah.
That's always been my goal as a director, period, is to just do everything in my power to get the truth there, right? And the truth is that at that time, yeah, you were a lot of good things and you were a lot of bad things. I mean, people wouldn't believe that no laughing. That type of shit happened all the time where you would make ridiculous fucking statements like that. I would be like, no one here is going to tell him go fuck yourself. Like, what do you mean? Like, but then I realized the relationship is different. I worked with you. They worked for you. That's where that stress I could see is like, this thing's going to get bad. And it eventually did. It eventually got really bad where everybody was talking behind everybody's back, and there have been a couple more like contract renegotiations, and at this point things are just not panning out, and I can see that this thing is going to go away. I could see it. I didn't know when, but I knew this thing's going to go away. And the one thing that I noticed, and I should have noticed it earlier, and I didn't, because I'm honestly, remember, I'm only 3 years older than you. So in that area, it's not like I'm anybody's dad, but I did have more experience. And what I could see is that if Ryan suddenly turns vengeance on his team, that's going to explode this thing. It's going to completely blow it all up. And they're all now upset, and they're, behind the scenes whispering and talking to executives and all kinds of stuff. And they're doing things that could create that. And I'm like, this whole thing's going to go south soon. But I kept waiting for like, what is going to be the bomb that sets it off? And there never really was a singular bomb that did it. What I should have noticed, and let me just start this segment out here, everybody, by saying this blanket statement. Whenever you go out and film, and this is like, I've been on hundreds of sets, about 80% of that traveling crew, somebody's going to do something as far as like drugs and alcohol go. Whether it's someone blows coke, someone has Ambien, someone drinks every night when they're done. I'm not going to say his name, but we had a director that used to every night, would get drunk watching dailies. I'm going to invite people over and sit around, drink beer and shit and watch dailies. Like this is not uncommon. Some people like weed, some people like pills, some people like whatever it is. It's very, that doesn't mean everyone. Like I said, about 80%. And that was about pretty accurate with Paranormal State. There was a group of people that didn't do any of that stuff, but the majority of people did something on some degree. And I remember, Ryan, the first night that I saw you take a pill. And what followed was an incredibly happy, relaxed, talkative person that was not socially awkward at all. You like became this person that from the outside view, if they didn't know what was going on, if they looked at you, it became much more, like I said, normal's the wrong word. I guess I should say expected. Like I said, the quirkiness kind of went away and there was a confidence about you now. And I didn't recognize right away that could become a real big problem if you like how you feel in that moment. Now, is that accurate to say that when you first started taking pills that you felt it helped you socially?
Well, I mean, like,
Did you feel that?
yeah, I mean, I wanted to be, fit in and kind of be cool a little bit. But then once I started taking it, then yeah, it was like, ooh, this feels good. I feel more relaxed. This makes me feel better about myself. Like I had all kinds of,
Yeah.
I was insecure and anxiety ridden and probably very clinically depressed. And here is Vicodin or Percocet or whatever, and here's that happy pill, and then right when it hits, and you're like, it was happiness in a little pill.
Take the pill, push the button. I'm happy now. And I've talked at length on this podcast, just so you know, about my addictions and battling this stuff, and So if I'm allowing you to talk more, I'm certainly not, hiding anything that I've done in my past. Everybody here knows I've struggled with this stuff. Um, but that's what I saw. But again, I wasn't like, at the time, I wasn't like going, let me watch out for a ride. We're like, you were my friend. You know what I mean? It's like we're equals in my mind. If that's, and I wasn't, your dad or your babysitter. I was somebody experiencing life with you at that time and going through my own kind of stuff. So I didn't recognize right away that it would be a problem with you. Uh, but I noticed probably about 6 months after that first time. And the big thing I noticed is that we used to be really, really, on set, if anything like that was going to come up, whether it was either, I mean, you guys had code words for smoking weed or code like, expressions, that you would say to each other because it was, you know, for obvious reasons, viewed as you don't want to spill your personal business in a work setting, right? Even if people know what you do, it's just you don't do it. And so whenever there was any discussions about partying and going anywhere or having any substances of any kind, it was always kind of kept quiet and whispered about in the corner. And then I remember about 6 months later, we were on an episode and we were about ready to wrap. And you were talking to me about that you had got some pills or something like that and you were ready to party or something like that. Or we used to call it candy or something. But you were just like wide open about it. You were wide open. I mean, like the world could hear. And they were just thinking, look, he's committed. Like, he don't care. Like, he's just letting it fly.
Mm.
And that was like my first kind of concern about, oh man, is he done with this show? Does he just not care? So fuck it. And of course, I started noticing different things, about you. Um, and a lot of it was you were also shorter tempered with everybody. Like you just didn't want, like a lot of people when they're high, not that they turn into dicks, they just don't want to deal with it. So like any kind of issues, we'll talk about it later. We'll figure it out. Not a problem. Like everything seemed to be on this timetable that only you had. We used to call it like Buell time. We used to be like, he's on Buell time, you know? Now there's a lyric to a song by Pantera that I love because it's always so perfectly described addiction, at least to me. And when I've dealt with it in the past, it's this line that says, sliding down the slide that breaks the will. And the reason that always hit me so powerful is because that's what it's like for me. It was like going down a slide so slowly, and then suddenly your feet hit the bottom, and you're like, whoa, where am I at? And you look, and you're all the way down the slide, and you didn't even realize it as you were going down there. At least for me. What was this like for you? And when did you like first start thinking, man, I might have a problem?
Yeah. Of course, like I went through many different stages of denial. Thinking like,
Yeah.
this was like an elevated form of, um, like this made me a better version of me. Because especially, I mean, I remember it used to be where we would just kind of do it on occasion, but then during season 5, it was like, it became an every week, every day thing. And I remember it just, next thing you know, it was like, a pill here and there to next thing you know, like I'm taking a few pills a day to then like I wake up and I got to take that pill and then, replenishing it. And I remember one time, I was home in State College and, I had to go into work, we were like kind of in that in between where we weren't shooting, but we were doing prep work for the next episodes.
Right.
And I think I had a couple producers or production member teams in our office waiting, and my drugs hadn't arrived yet, and so I'm sitting there waiting, and it was being the person bringing it was delayed, shocker, but all of a sudden I remember sitting on my couch, and it was sunny outside, but I fucking hated the sun. And there was like no color. Everything just seemed disgusting. And I was hurting. And like, I just remember sitting there and just like, shaking my one leg and just like holding like my sides, um, until, I mean, I don't know how many hours passed, and then finally, they showed up, and I took that pill, and all of a sudden everything was bright and happy again. And I remember thinking like, that's a bad sign. I didn't know anything about addiction. I didn't even think that taking opiates, on a heavily for a few months would cause a dependence. I had no idea, no idea, wasn't thinking about it. Um, and so that was like, I remember thinking to myself on that particular day, like, oh shit. Um, but I, instead of being like, well, maybe I should get help, I was like, I doubled down. I'm like, I have to make sure I don't ever run out again. So,
Yeah, man. That is the darkest thought. I know.
yeah.
Well, what was weird with me is my struggles, thank God, came, man, about 2 years before I even met you. That was the last, uh, massive, you know what I mean? Like, I got a problem type of shit. And so when everybody was like, partying in between shoots and doing all that stuff, when I started seeing that it was going in that direction, I was not over a cliff at all. And I was able to be like, you know what, I'm gonna stop doing this. And especially once you started talking to me about directing, because I kept thinking to myself, well, there's just no way that you can direct a series and be hammered. At least I couldn't. There's just no way. And I remember I was out with Laura, and for some reason, God, we were at Universal Studios or something, and you called me, and you're like, Chad. I'm like, yeah, man. And you were like, you just kind of, because I had talked to you about it a couple other times, and you had and listen, man, I don't blame you for it. Anybody who goes through it does it. It was complete denial. It was just like, I'm fine, dude. I'm good. I'm good. I was like, okay, I'm seeing all the signs. It tells me you're not, but like, okay. And you called me, and you just told me. You were just like, yeah, man, this is, I stopped taking it cold turkey, and I'm really messed up right now. And you said you had a Coke, and it just threw, which of course that sugar is going to throw your body into like damn near convulsions from the
No,
withdrawals.
it was a couple days
And
after
you were
Christmas.
asking
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're asking me, how long does that take? I said, well, from my experience, when you're going to have to get to day like 4 or 5, and then you'll be okay. And I think it was like day 2, and you were like, fuck, that's so
Yeah.
long. That's so far away. Because that 2 days seems like an eternity when you're in that state, you know? And I thought, I to my memory, at least at that point, you had kind of broken away from it. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. And I went on and directed a couple more episodes, and everything was cool. And then I started noticing the same stuff, because there's lies that people tell to be vindictive, and then there's circumstantial lies. I started catching you lying to me about shit, but it was clearly to cover what was going on with the addiction. Like a time that you'll probably remember, and I knew what this was, is I was directing and I saw you had a timer on your clock, on your phone, and you kept looking at that timer. And I was like, oh, dude, oh no.
Yeah, so
I'm like, he's stretching this out.
that was
Yeah, do you remember
no, I
that?
do. It was but it was before all that. Like that was like right before. That was like at the very end of when I remember it was Christmas season when yeah, I even fuck, I remember leaving, I have to go do something for a couple hours to go meet up with someone to give me stuff.
Yeah,
And then we shut
yeah,
down for Christmas, and that's when I got clean. Well, clean
yeah.
for the time being, and then of course after that,
That's what I'm
yeah,
saying. There was, I remember multiple iterations where you got clean.
yeah, yeah.
And I was like, well, fuck, you just went through those withdrawals. That's the biggest medicine in the world to make you not want to go back. But then you were, yeah, it was like you seemed good.
Well, yeah. When I got
And
clean, and that phone call I gave you, which was hey, I'm withdrawing. It was like a couple days after Christmas. That was it for a long period of time. That was because we only had 2 episodes left to shoot, and that was it. Like we were done, like with the series. And I just remember even those two.
well, and that made sense to
Yeah.
me because that final episode, everyone was like, how's Ryan? I was like, I think he was clean. I'm like, I could just tell, you know what I mean? You know people's personalities, you know. And I was like, I think he was good, you know. And then, God, it got so strange. I just stopped hearing from you. And then I would need to talk to you. And every time I would call there, people would go, well, he'll call you back. He's sick right now, or he can't, help right now, or he can't talk right now. And I started getting so fucking pissed because I was like, what is going on? And we had booked an event in Iowa. And I was like, I totally think this kid's doing drugs again. And we had this event in Iowa and you ghosted me. I talked to you like the night before. And you were like saying, yeah, I'm going to be there. At first, like a week out, you were like, oh, some scheduling conflict came up. And then, like the night before, you were like, yeah, no, I'm going to still make it work. I'll be there. And that was the last event that we had scheduled together. Because I was like, you know what, this kid's not well, and I know it. So what, and now I don't have the show, so I don't see him like I did. Like I don't know what to do at this point except really focus, I guess, on what I can focus on. And then I kept hearing about this tour, and you eventually invited me to join the tour, the Canadian tour, and I just told you, yeah, no, like I'm busy, I can't do it. There's no way, because I'm just thinking there's no chance he's going to go on this Canadian tour. Good luck getting pills and shit into Canada and traveling across there for weeks on end. You know what I mean? And that's when, to my memory, and this again, things could be even be out of order, but that's when I started hearing scary stories about you. Scary stories. And this also happened right after uh, the release of American Ghost Hunter, which, yeah, it took 96 days, almost 3 months to get all those out. But even then, I was just like, where the fuck is Ryan in all this? Like, what is going on? And I knew that's what it was. I knew that's what it was. And then, yeah, man, things started going crazy with headlines about you. And I saw you out here in LA for the first time. Now, granted, the whole time, Ryan, people are absolutely crucifying me because the public doesn't know that I'm not with you. I'm not hanging out with you. I wasn't on this tour, and I'm not out there bashing you because honestly, I knew that this was like life or death with you. I felt like this is going to be really bad. And then I got a call saying you're in, you were in LA or something, and you were going to swing by, and it was weird. You were visiting like networks and stuff,
Yeah.
or you said you did,
Yeah.
and you showed up ripped. I mean, ripped. And I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
haven't seen this before. I was extremely uncomfortable, and I got you out as quickly as I could. And and I just kept hearing stories that he's living at the Roosevelt,
Yeah.
and there's just nothing good in that area of town. And I'm just thinking, and the price of that, like, I had no idea what was happening. Um, so what what happened from that? Because I don't know these answers. We haven't even talked about this yet. From that last time that you were clean, like, what happened to send you back over the edge?
I mean, Chad, I don't fully know your recovery story. I know I can only speak on mine. Is that like, you know, when I got clean the first time, which was right as we were finishing Paranormal State, like it was this jarring experience. So I kind of just cold turkeyed it, and things were good for like 6 months. But then it popped back up again. And the next thing you know, like, and this is after Paranormal State was done, I found myself once again doing pills. And I remember, again, getting off of them. And then came Adderall and Ativan, that mix. And then
What is that? I didn't know anything about this. What is that mix? What does that mix
so
do?
Adderall, it's an ADHD medication, but it's like an amphetamine. And so, like, at first it was like, oh man, this makes me, focus, gives me energy. But then I would start popping it and staying up for days. Like, I was like staying up for days. Um,
So it's like meth or coke.
yeah, and not that I knew any of this. I've never done anything other than weed. Then, of course, then it was pills, and then now it was this,
Right.
and then it was like this bomb inside of me went off where like I just you know like things were falling apart in my life. And I mean, and by my own hand, but a lot of it also was too, it was just like realizing that like I wasn't okay. And instead of trying to focus on that, it was, let's just self medicate. And so I went to LA and got introduced to meth. I'm not, and there's some parts of the story maybe one day I'll share, but not that I'm lying about any of this, but like some things are just a little deeply personal. Um, but I got introduced to meth, and it was it was like this very weird sensation. I, of course, I remember just staying up for days on it. And then I just went all in. I just was like, fuck it. I'm going to try do everything. And I was so defeated. Like, I didn't, I know this is going to sound so dramatic, but like, I didn't want to live anymore. I just didn't care. And so I,
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you. I mean to stop your story right now because I think that feeling you just said, you said this to me once before. The last time that I saw you or the time before in LA when you were here, you and Laura had a conversation about you having cancer. And she's my wife, she had just lost her mom to cancer. And I watched Laura cry and I watched her hug you. And to my vision, this was an authentic moment between both of you. And you sold me because I ended up getting in arguments with people going, listen, I understand that Ryan is in a place where he's lying about tons of shit, but I can't imagine that he would lie about that. He didn't have to Laura. I mean, and that's not a lie you can come back from. You either make yourself die of pancreatic cancer or you don't tell the lie. I mean, I couldn't process that was a lie. And I had gotten in huge like arguments with people about this, going, there's no fucking way he's lying about that. And then it just, I don't know, I just had a moment of clarity one day where I'm just like, he's absolutely fucking lying about that. Why, Ryan? That's the question I think anybody has is why there? Like, why did you choose that and say that? Because to clear things up, you didn't have
No,
cancer.
no, never did.
Why did you choose that?
Look, I have nothing to hold back about this at this point. You know, like, I don't ever remember sitting down and saying, let me come up with some story. It was just, I don't have any memory of that. All I remember was saying it, but I think I said it because it's how I felt. Like, I think that I just wanted to die. And so instead of telling people that, hey, I'm going to kill myself with drugs, it was like a metaphor of like, I know this is going to kill me. Um, and so it was like a way of, as fucked up as it sounds. I'm not trying to be like, hey, this makes this okay. But it was like a metaphor of like what was happening anyways. Like I had every intention of dying anyways. So, um, I don't know. Like I've asked myself, like, why, what was I going to plan to do? Be like, I've miraculously survived pancreatic cancer. It's a Christmas miracle. Like there was none of that. There was no other side to it. It was always going to end with me dying. Um, and so I believed that I was not going to come back from LA. 1,000%. I was doing heroin, coke, everything. I was doing it all at once. I mean, it was just, and so, yeah.
Had I not seen you at that time, I wouldn't believe this story you're telling me right now. But I did see you, and my genuine thought, I didn't know. At the moment, I didn't believe. I thought you did have cancer, and I thought you were just trying to kill yourself early. That's what I thought. I thought he has cancer, and he's just saying, "Fuck it, I'm just going out on fire." It's that old line: "It's better to burn out than fade away." And you know, George, my buddy George, who's not with us anymore, God rest his soul, he had some connections in dark places. And you were running into people that he knows throughout that thing. And I finally had to tell him, like, George, I can't hear these stories anymore, dude. Because I'm so fucking mad at this kid right now, and I genuinely care about him. And it was weird because like everybody wanted me to just tear you apart. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how, especially when I've never, look, I didn't make the decisions you made, but I've been the victim of this demon of addiction. And I know what it does to otherwise quality people. And it's not like when I met Ryan Buell, he was this monster of a human being. But I didn't know if that guy was dead or not. I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know if I would ever see you again. I didn't know. And my honest to God feeling was, well, if I don't ever see him again, I don't want my last time I speak about him or to talk about him or to remember him or anything to be like this big bash session. If I'm never going to see him again, like anybody who passes that you care about, you want to think of the good times. You want to think of the good memories that you had. And we had a million of them. And this is all the things that like people they don't know. We live in this world with social media where people think they know shit because they saw you on a reality show. And they don't know anything about your life, your personality, what you're dealing with. And that doesn't mean that there weren't, man, believe me, you left a army of people pissed off that were all supporters behind you that wanted to see you at a tour and all this stuff. And I don't got to tell you this, at least I hope not. They were all justified for feeling the way they felt. And I understood that they were all justified. But I also I knew too much. I knew that, I knew he's probably not going to live, man. You guys all are so angry at him, and you have every right to be. I'm talking about the public now, your fans. You have every right to be. Nobody would say you don't. Hey, of course you do. But, and I just didn't, I was like, he shouldn't die. He needs help, and then he needs to make his wrongs right again and start the process of rebuilding. And that is what has to happen. And I so badly wanted to reach out to you at that time and just be like, dude, like enough is enough, man. Just stop because I'm going to bury you. I could see where this is going. Like, I'm really, really going to fucking see you die. And I just know that feeling that you're talking about of wanting to die. So when I talked about doing this with you, it wasn't so I could drum up, support for you or to make you look good or look bad or look anyway. It was just like I just want, like anything else, I want people to see the truth in these things. Because the truth that nobody wants to believe or look at is that could be you. Trust me, Ryan, nobody in my lifetime before I had my battles, no one would have told you, oh, Chad Kaler's going to battle with addiction one day. Nobody would have guessed that. I used to make rock bands that I managed sign contracts stating they wouldn't smoke weed. I'm sure nobody would have met you as a young guy and said this is going to happen to him.
Yeah.
But it can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. And I just don't want to live in a world where if it happens to you, you're just fucked forever. Everyone should have to pay for what they do, but it shouldn't have to be that forever you have to pay a penance. Because that could never, ever, be restored. Not restored. I don't believe that. And I just wanted people to really know where your head's at and like what was going on. Um, the next thing I started hearing is I don't even know what happened. So maybe you can explain this to me. Did you steal some car or some shit?
Uh,
I started hearing crazy
yeah.
stuff, dude.
Well, that makes sense. I was doing crazy things. I mean, it got to a point where, I mean, at first it was like, yeah, I'm in LA, I'm doing this, and I was this tornado and of just chaos and anger and everything. And it got to a point where, I was homeless and then I would be quote unquote clean for a time and then bam, here we go again. each time I fell deeper and deeper. I eventually, it was like 2015, I like went super all in, where like I was hanging out with other addicts. I was dating one. Like, whereas I didn't have to hide it anymore. It was like me and this guy were, we were getting fucked up together. And stupid things that you hear addicts do. Like, yeah, I rented a car and I was gonna go home to visit my family down south. I just moved out of my house and put stuff in storage, and I was like, I'll figure that out later. I'll come back in a few weeks and find another place, because my lease had ended, and so took a car with at the time this guy I was with, and what should have been like a 10-hour car ride took 4 days to get down there. We got kicked out of hotels along the way. I mean, we were awful. Even other addicts would steer clear from us. It was volatile. So my mom, who was desperate to like, she, again, of course, I'm like you, when I went to, see you in LA, I gave some stupid ass bullshit story. I'm telling mom, no, I'm clean. I'm just really tired. And I sat on her couch to talk to her, and I thought I was great. I thought I looked good, but apparently I'd fallen asleep like 8 times in the middle of me talking. Me and this guy, she put us up in a lake, in a friend's lake house that was in between leases. Well, we almost burned the place down, got kicked out of there. So, here we are just hopping around hotels, and we didn't want to leave yet because we would run out of drugs. And so we had to stay an extra couple days because we get drugs and, oh, yay, fun. And then we're out again. And so it was like this insanity cycle. And lo and behold, at this point, what was supposed to be a couple weeks trip ended up being like, I don't know, 2 months. And so, renting the car at like end of July. Now here it was September. And of course, shocker, not paying the bill didn't even cross my mind. My phone had gotten shut off, so I wasn't getting any phone calls. So anyways, we were in this hotel that was known for being a drug hotel, and we had just found enough money to book some Airbnb in Hilton Head. And we're like, oh, well, we'll have one last hurrah before we go up. We get a knock on the door.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And we get a knock on the door, and it was a guy going, hey, is Ryan here? And we thought, when I heard it, I just thought like, oh, it was one of our druggy buddies. Okay, whatever. And so my, now ex, boyfriend at the time, he opened the door, and the guy sees me and goes, you're under arrest. I was like, for what? And he said that my car was registered as stolen. And so, it was, odd, because I'm like, well, I didn't steal it. And once the sheriff knew that I had a rental agreement, he was like, oh, he's like, well, we don't have anything for that type of charge down here. However, it didn't matter. He was holding me for PA, and there was a charge for me in PA, and they got back very quickly. Because he was like, if I don't hear back in 10 minutes, I'm letting this guy go. So it was a long ass 10 minutes, man. I was like sitting there waiting, and then sure enough, they were like, we want him. And so got thrown in jail. They impounded the car. So I suddenly found myself in the slammer in the deep south, not in a city. So this was like, it was like a Florence, South Carolina jail, and it was scary, man. Being completely cut off from the outside world. My mom would not take my calls. And essentially it was like, long story short, they believed I stole the car, understandably so. It certainly looked that way.
Well, you did though, right? I mean, if it's past the agreement, you still have it. You're not telling them. That's stealing a car.
Well, yeah, and what I'm saying is like, the argument that they had made was I was planning to leave the country which not true. However, again, I'm not going to fight that. It's like semantics at this point. I had taken a car, not paid
Right.
for it.
Yeah, there's no gray area, right?
Uh, like, yeah, absolutely, it was theft. But no, I wasn't planning to bolt the country. But who was going to listen to me argue at that point? So, I'm in jail, and I was pretty much put in solitary for a week. Until
I'm just saying, would they know who you are?
that was when I got transferred up to Pennsylvania jail. So I was extradited with some real scary folks. We're all handcuffed in the back of a van. Took us 2 days to, be dropped. It took me 2 days to be dropped off at my stop. You can't use the bathroom until we get to another jail, and I remember my aunt was like, bullshit, that's not true. And my uncle, who had worked in law enforcement, was like, what do you think they're going to do? Just to let these, felons, just stop on the side of the road or McDonald's and pee? Like, no. So like, yeah, we were all handcuffed to each other in the back of a van, holding it until we eventually got to another jail. And then like, there were no windows on one side. So I remember when I got in at the very beginning, I remember a guy goes, "Hey, what day is it?" I was like, "What do you mean, what day is it?" And I guess people picked up from further south had been in there for God knows how long. But yeah, the story that I told you was when I finally got to State College, or the jail in the State College area, and you have to do a cavity search. And so, yeah, so you have to strip down naked in front of them, and then you have to spread your ass cheeks and bend over, and then a guy has to come up with a flashlight and really look in there. And as he's doing this, I mean, I could feel his breath on my legs. That's how close up in there as he was. And he goes, "By the way, big fan." And I was like, "Thanks." Like it was just this weird, like, yeah, people knew. And it was a news story. Like Ryan Buell gets arrested for this. And then of course in PA,
Oh yeah.
um, people were like, yeah, the Paranormal State guys in our jail. Um,
Want to hear a crazy story? I didn't know this. My drummer for 35-inch Mutter, my band,
yeah.
for years, since he left Ames, all throughout Paranormal State, all that, lived in State College.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that one
Out of the
time.
blue, yeah, out of the blue, he gets a hold of me and's like, "What's the deal with your fucking boy? He's in jail here." Like,
Yeah.
dude, I haven't spoken to him. I'm like, I don't know what is going on with him. But yeah, he said, yeah, he's in jail back here. Everyone's talking about it. I was like, oh, jeez.
Yep. So it was,
And you,
yeah, I
so you go to jail, and that sounds like a lovely experience. Um, so I know you went another time after you got in a fight with a boyfriend or something.
yeah, it was the same guy I was referring to that had been with since 2015 or something like that. I got out of jail eventually. My mom had pleaded with fans not to help me. So
I saw that.
yeah,
Yeah.
she, she was, of course I was mad at her at the time, but mom was just desperate to try to save me. And she was like, if everyone just backs away, maybe he'll finally fall and get help. And my mom, as much as I'm sure it pained her to hear her son in jail, she at least knew I wasn't going to OD and die. And so she felt I was safe. And eventually I did find a way to make bail, and you would think, okay, that's it. No, I chose the guy I was with and the drugs, and it spiraled even harder. And at this point, the the boyfriend, he was hitting it even harder as well. So paranoid delusions, fighting. Um, and then it was like April 2017, 6 months after I got out. I mean, at that point, we were fighting every day. Um, and he believed that I stole his drugs or something. I don't know. And so, anyways, fight broke out. My friend, who I had known for years, was still living in State College, and he wanted to get me out of that situation. And so he was pleading with us. He was pleading with my boyfriend, please let him go. And he was pleading with me, like, please go. And I just remember being so tired. Like, I mean, I hadn't eaten. For days, I had nothing in my system except for drugs. And I kind of not passed out. I just kind of fell over. And so my friend, called the ambulance, and with the ambulance came the police, and the police took, a look at both of us. And,
Yeah.
because we were together, they were like, all right, domestic dispute. And they declared me the winner of the fight. And so I got thrown back into the back of their car. And I remember just bawling the entire way, like a, a baby, going back to the jail where I had been 6 months ago. And I was done. Like, that was it. I was done. Um, I didn't call anyone for a couple days. Um, Whereas beforehand, it was like, get me out, get me out. This time I just sat there and just stared until finally someone was like, you should probably call somebody to let them know you're here. And of course, I figured they already knew anyways who would want to hear from me. And to my, so counselor suggested I call my mom, and I was like, she doesn't want to hear from me. But she convinced me, and so I called her, and to my surprise, my mom picked up. And she the the pain in her voice, it was just,
Oh man.
it was just like, she's like, you are killing us. Like, you are murdering us, and it is so painful because we're watching you die. And and she told me some things, like they were they were having conversations about my funeral, like arrangements.
Yeah.
And my mom drove up to visit me in jail. And I remember my mom just crying, and my mom's a tough woman. And she's just like, you have always done amazing things in your life. And she's like, you are so much better than this place. You don't like, she's like, we want you home, but why don't you want to come home? Like, why are you choosing this over us? And, I didn't have an answer for her. I just, it wasn't that logical for me. Um, and so I just, you know, my mom left because, we weren't even allowed to touch. Um, and so I couldn't even hear her voice, like, physically. It was I just remember how impersonal it was. It was behind a screen, and we had to talk through phones. And I just wanted so desperately to, like, touch my mom, but I couldn't. And, um, they essentially, she left, and I just remember going like, okay, I'm going to try. And my lawyer, it just happened to also be in recovery. And so he was like, and he represented me the first time, and he was like, okay, so this is a drug problem. And so he petitioned the court to let me go to rehab. And the DA was kind of on board as long as the judge signed over, which he did. And so I had 48 hours to get my ass to rehab. And yeah, I went to rehab, and I had thought to myself, well, maybe I should just eat clean for a little bit. Like that addict brain was still there. Um,
Yeah.
but once I got
Yeah.
into rehab and I saw all these other people struggling, it was like, and people dropping out of rehab. And I remember the first guy, my first roommate, he looked like a biker's version of Dumbledore, like long beard, glasses, but tattoos up and down. But he was so cool. And he introduced me to some things in recovery. But then a couple weeks later, he left, relapsed, got drunk, set a fire, and killed himself in that fire. Um,
Wow.
and so, but that's some darker, you know, tales there. But like on the flip side, I also saw people, their families coming to visit, and people picking up chips 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and talking about how much their lives have changed. And I just wanted that so badly. Um, and so I decided to do it. So I had to cut ties with all those addicts who weren't really my friends anyways. I had to, cut ties with my boyfriend, um, who was, you know, was in his own way kind of fighting me on that. But in the end, we finally parted ways. And so like I had to restart. I moved back in. The courts allowed me to stay in South Carolina, um, and pay, had to pay an ungodly amount of restitution. And I was on probation and everything. It was just like, okay, and here I am. And then it was like, what do I do now? Like, so, like I made this decision to stay clean and, do right with, try to put myself back out there, which was not easy. But more importantly, it was about making things right with my family first. Um,
Yeah.
so sorry, I know that was a long ass ramble, but
No, no, that's why you're here, man. Um, what? So the tour, the Canadian tours, whatever happened with that? I mean, did you guys refund people, or how did that work?
Chad, honestly, like that was all happening in the middle of my drug run. Um, it was never intended to like, oh, I'm going to steal money, because I had done plenty of events
Right.
before to know like the best business is repeat business.
Right.
So do the fucking tour as I'd done many times, collect your profit, do another one. Um, and so, but the problem was I was just too fucked up to where I couldn't do it. And
Yeah.
spending it before, spending profits ahead of time and the cost. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make any qualms about that. And so I know that we made an effort back then. People who were kind of volunteering for PRS were making an effort to refund as much as possible of what was there, what was left. Um,
Right.
and to my understanding, a good chunk did get refunded. And then unfortunately, just records were lost. Like, you know, uh, it was messy. It was absolutely messy.
Right.
Um, so
If there were people that had like records, I mean, could they like come to future events or something?
yeah, so
Like if you host them, you know what I
so
mean?
what I've done is like, throughout, the years of me being clean um and doing events, is that if they could show me some type of documentation, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take your word at this, and sure, come on.
Right.
Um,
It's part of the process of rebuilding.
yeah, well, what I want to say is like there are some amends that are going to take me a very long time to do. And even though some, may not
Yeah.
necessarily be amended now, doesn't mean that have forgotten about them. I am to this day still making amends. So it's not done.
Well, that's the thing that I think a lot of people realize when they go through addiction is that you're never going to be really done with making amends. I mean, because people shouldn't forget. I would hope that they uh, anybody, including myself, when people have wronged me, I would hope that I have the ability to find the peace of forgiveness. But I don't ever want people to forget what I've done wrong in my life because that's the shit that keeps me from doing it again.
Yeah.
When you said about you just want life to change and good things can't, I've just noticed over and over again, and this is, here comes the karma talk, but I do believe in karma. Like, one of the things that frustrated me so much when American Ghost Hunter was going down is at that time I had never worked so hard, dude. I mean, I went and did a Blood Red Sky, and I was on tour for that, and I had this one going. It was just all lined up, and then when it started going wrong, and I was like, "Fuck, where is Buell?" One of the craziest things happened is at the time I was scared because I'm like, I've got to get this done. I don't know how to do this. I have no help to do this. But I ended up having to bring on a partner, which to help me get everything out there and resolve it all. It ended up being the best thing in my life. He's an amazing guy. Uh, Thomas, he's killer. I mean, he's a wonderful partner, wonderful guy, and I mean, it totally looked to me. I was like, I was doing the right things, and karma sent me the right solution. And I think it starts with what you're doing now. Being honest, I've been asked many times by people who know you and friends, do you ever think Ryan Buell would ever be someone to admit his wrongs? And there was a time where I was like, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I don't think he ever will. And I was shocked when we started talking, when we finally, connected, because I did hear, I heard a person that was hurt, that was embarrassed, that was humiliated, but was being honest with me, which is the only thing any friend really wants out of their friend, right? Be honest with me. Like, if someone bullshits you, by definition, they're not your friend. You know what I mean? And, you know, I want you to know that forgiveness, I believe, is just as much about the person finding peace that's doing the forgiving as it is for the person who's being forgiven. And when it came to us, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the primary reasons as well that I didn't go out and just blast you to no end and just be like, fuck him, blah, 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 this, that. It's just like, I don't want to be that to you. And I don't want that to be like who we are to the world, if that makes sense. Because I still to this day get letters daily that go, hey man, when are you and Buell going to do something? Or when have you talked to Ryan? Are you guys hanging out again? Are you doing this? And I believe that's because there was a genuine friendship there and a genuine like bromance, whatever you want to call it. And people saw that we were doing special things when we were focused and we were together. And we were like making shit happen. And that's the Buell that I know. And I just know that you're here. You're talking to me now. And not one time throughout this entire conversation have you objected to anything that I've said. And that is what lets me know that there's a genuine attempt to try to restore and to rebuild. It's hard when you're wrong, dude. Being wrong is hard. It's real hard. And when you know you fucked someone over or you did something that's out of character, to have to stand up in front of people and say, "Yeah, I did it." God, bro, I just happened to be online one of the first times you went back online. And I was reading your chat box. Oh my God, dude. It was heinous, man. It was
You mean like
brutal.
one of my lives? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was fucking brutal. Like the most brutal I'd ever seen. And there wasn't a part of me that was like, good, he should be. No, I just kind of felt like, man, I hope this can be a learning moment. Because if it can, not only for him and for everybody else, but if it can, positivity can still come out of this. It can still come out of it. And look, I've lived through that, man. I mean, I remember going through the shit with my family when I was a kid and going through all that haunting stuff. And if you'd have ever told me that that would have ended up being a positive in any way, in the moment, I would have never believed that to be possible. But through doing the right thing and karma and the stuff we believed in and that we fought for, that situation ended up being a teachable moment, a teachable scenario, something that was positive. Which is why when I heard that you went back to college again, I didn't believe it at first. I was like, get the fuck out of here. He's going back to school. And then I see you graduated. So tell people what you've been doing. This is, I think, very impressive. Tell people.
Yeah.
What's Buell doing these days?
So, I, after I hit my first year mark of getting clean, I took some, classes. It was actually, during the American Ghost Hunter tour, I remember these therapists pulled me aside, psychologist therapists, and they were like, Ryan, you should go back for this. And I said, yeah, I'd thought about it, but I never have the time. Um, so after my first year getting clean, I took a couple classes as a non-degree student and met with the department head and wanted to see if this was something I could actually do. And she was like, you should apply. I will write you a letter of recommendation. And so I sat on it for like a year or so, and then I applied and I got accepted. I mean, which shocked me because I have a history, um, and yet they felt, as this one professor told me a couple years prior, that no, you can use that to your advantage to help other people. Um, and so, I mean, I literally thought they would not, no school would let me go in. But she's like, the therapy world is a forgiving world. Like we're about helping people. So why wouldn't we do the same for
Right.
people who want to come in? And so, I had already knew I wanted to work with addicts too, on top of a variety of different clients. So yeah, I went back to school at the University of South Carolina. Got my master's in counseling. Graduated this past May, and I got approved to be a nationally certified counselor. Again, I had to go before a board, explain myself, my whole history. Um, and I'm in Texas now, and I got licensed to practice therapy here. But
Wow.
yeah. So what you do is you're still kind of supervised for so many hours. So I'm a licensed professional counselor associate, and then once I get my hours done, then it's just I'm a full, a licensed professional counselor. Um, so I'm working with people with addiction, people with depression, LGBTQ issues, um, people who have experienced trauma, and people who've experienced paranormal trauma. Um, so I'm working with people both in the clinical setting and then even out, as helping them process their paranormal experiences through therapy. So, but at the same time too, like, recovery is important to me. And so, doing some stuff there, play therapy. I got a certificate in play therapy as well. So yeah,
Wow,
that's what I'm doing.
that's wild, man.
Yeah.
Um, Blanket question here. I have a couple quick questions. Well, I know we've been on for a long time. We'll wrap it up. But is there any part of you that misses anything from your past, whether it be the drug life, the TV life, the touring life, like anything you miss at all?
Drugs, no. Like, yeah, of course there were some fun.
That's good.
Of course, there were some fun memories on drugs, but like, or I should say, experiences.
Sure.
But no, I don't miss it. And when it comes to like, paranormal state, and I know we've kind of talked about the struggles with paranormal state, but man, there were some good times. And so like,
Some of the best times of my life, dude.
yeah, it's a weird thing, right? Because it's like, God, it was so tough, but at the same time, it was so good. It was like, um, and so I at times do miss that. I don't
Yeah.
miss. I also do not miss the heavy fame aspect. Like, I like that I can, that I have. You talked a little bit about internal happiness. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
finally at a stage where I have that. I have real friends. I'm very close with my family.
Right.
I, like, yes, people know about my, paranormal state days as well as my drug past, but like, I've bonded with so many other recovering addicts who love me for me. Um, and so like that part I don't miss so much. It was that loud noise. But if it ever happens
Yeah.
again, I feel like hopefully I'd be in a better place to handle it.
I'm sure you would. Yeah. I mean, it's how could you not? For all the success you had, you also came into an abnormally bad scenario. Um, and like the other experiences, you learn from that, and it becomes wisdom. Last question: is there anything at all that you wanted to touch on, or that you didn't cover, or you feel like you want to get out here in this conversation? Anything else you think people should know and you want them to know?
I mean, I just want to reiterate again, if anyone's listening and they are like, and they were impacted by anything I did, just know that in that sense, I do regret the things that I did. And I'm sorry that I hurt people. And I'm sorry if anyone's listening that I hurt you. Like I don't expect anyone to believe me or be like, okay, all's forgiven just because I said this. But like, it is a lifelong thing that I am, in some amends I will make for the rest of my life. And so I know it may, you know, for what it's worth, like I think about my actions a lot. It is very much a part of my story. Um, and like you said earlier too, Chad, like it's about accountability, right? Like I'm well aware of like if I miss an event, people are going to be like, "Oh, there goes Ryan again." Um, Even if it's for a legit reason. Like I'm always aware. I don't want to let people down again within my power, and and if anyone is struggling, out there, whether it be alcohol, weed, harder drugs, pills, um, it likes to lie to you to think that you need that to be a better whole person. But I promise you that life on the other side of drugs and alcohol addiction is very fucking beautiful. It's like I got to live three lives three lifetimes. There was the life before, there was the life during addiction, then there's the life after. And like, and if anyone thinks, no, I too much damage, I can't turn back. No, it's not about turning back. It's about going forward in a new direction. Like, I have no doubt if you're listening that someone out there loves you. And there are other people out there who are wanting to love you. So, just know I'm rooting for you.
Well, dude, I'll tell you what. I'm glad you're not dead.
Me too.
We were incredibly close, man. And so, of course, my emotions were that of a family member. It was like I got so fucking pissed and so angry and so upset, but there was never any part of me that wanted the demise of Ryan Buell. What always mattered to me on the personal level is that you found your way back somehow. I didn't know what it would be. I didn't know. When things like this happen, you always pray that the rock bottom winds up being like a safe event that you can traverse back from. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably just as much of a miracle as sobriety is. Is that I'm sure when you think of how you were living at your worst, it's insane.
Yeah.
And the fact that you made it back and got to at least this point, um, trust is rebuilt with baby steps, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. That's how it should be. And as long as other people in your life are okay with it. Remember, some people aren't going to be. Some people aren't going to forgive. That was part of something I had to learn too.
Yeah.
There are going to be people that just can't find it in them, and that's okay. As long as you are genuinely sorry, and you've genuinely done what you could do to make it better, you're not the first guy to get lost on drugs and alcohol. This isn't new. You're not special for it. It's the most common fucking thing about any of
Yeah.
us. You know what I mean? That's what I hated about it, is it made me so fucking common. It just made me another story. And I hated that about that side of my personality. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be the story that everybody tells. And that still pushes me to this day of not wanting to be that same old story. Chad went out to Hollywood, got a taste of it, fucked him up. Everyone's told that story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to be the guy that's like, Chad followed his dreams, man. Lived them. Accomplished it all. He's doing good in life.
That is a good story.
Well, look, man, I'll continue to pray for you. And we're talking now. Relationships take time to rebuild, but uh, I've always been hopeful that chance would exist between us again. Uh, because when we were focused, beyond the fact that we were deadly, beyond that, god damn, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
For
sure.
So I'm glad you're on your way back. Proud of you for your degree and what you're doing there, man. That's cool. That sounds like I'm your fucking dad or something. Proud of you, boy. But no, I mean seriously, that's an accomplishment, man. That's cool. And look, we'll keep talking. And to everybody listening to the podcast, you all now have just heard your reason why I didn't want to write about this and talk about this. And a lot of it is because that's Ryan's story to tell. And I can only tell you my angle, and it feels incomplete unless he's there to tell his story. And this is what I wanted. I wanted for people to just hear it from him and take everything he said for what it's worth. You be the judge of what you think and believe. And I'm just really thankful, Ryan, that you took the time to do this. You didn't have to. I think it's brave, dude. Thank you, and we'll have to do it again sometime. Talk about something a little more fun.
No, Chad means a lot. I always knew in my heart we were still friends, and that's never changed, and and that you supported me from afar, and I just want to thank you for that, and also for giving me the chance to come on and talk about all this. So we'll keep talking.
Yeah, man, for sure. To everybody listening, thank you guys for listening. I know you guys enjoy it when I bring guests on. I don't do it often. But the reason is I want it to have this type of impact. So I hope you guys, you know, if anything, hear the experiences that this man has because there's wisdom in those words. So much love, everybody. Thank you all for listening. And I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.